Good evening, Vacaville. We appreciate everyone who is participating in tonight's Planning Commission teleconference meeting. This meeting will be conducted pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order N-29-20. Please bear with us as we attempt to use the remote tools. Instructions to call into the meeting or participate from a computer are provided on the agenda and the city's website at www.cityofvacaville.com. Planning Commission meetings can also be seen live on the website or on cable channel 26. If you are planning to participate, you will need to follow along on the call, not channel 26, since there is a broadcast delay. Callers who wish to comment can raise their hand by pressing *9. Computer users can click the raise hand button with their Zoom controls to raise their hands. Depending on your individual settings, you may need to press *6 after you are unmuted by the host in order to open your mic. At this time, I'd like to call the May 19th, 2020 Vacaville City Planning Commission meeting to order. May we have the roll call, please?
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Chair McCauley. Vice Chair Aldridge.
Here.
Commissioner Beaumont.
Here.
Commissioner Fortney.
Here.
Commissioner Alan Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Brett Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Lightfoot.
Here.
Vice Chair Aldridge. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Could you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Do we have any communications?
Yes, we received several communications shown on the screen, and those were provided to the commission via email. And all those were on the item 8A.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda. Doug Beaumont.
Madam Chair, I would like to make one amendment to the agenda. On item 8A, the Park Parish, the applicant has requested that the item be removed from the agenda. And we will schedule a community meeting in the near future to clarify information and have an exchange of ideas about this particular project. There was some incorrect information floating around that this somehow would change approved plans for Magnolia Park. And I want to assure the public that this is not the case. This item does not change at all the plans for Magnolia Park. On the diagram that's on the screen, you see that there's an area that has always been in the plans for a church daycare facility that was a private property that is not part of Magnolia Park. It's never been part of Magnolia Park. And there was some discussion about allowed uses for that particular property, but that does not involve the park at all. So we will schedule a community meeting in the near future to discuss that and the property across the street. I just want to remove my AA from the agenda and let them know that this does not change any plans for Magnolia Park.
Thank you. Let's go back then to approval of the agenda, and I believe I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Alan seconded it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Unanimous.
I have a quick question. This is Commissioner Johnson. I just want to make sure that the revised motion includes removing item 8A, because as initially motioned, it did not include that. Can you confirm?
I made the motion. I will revise the motion to delete item 8A. Doug Beaumont.
Okay, let's take a revote then with the amendment.
Madam Chair, before you do that, this
Yes.
is Andrea, Assistant City Attorney.
Yes.
All of our votes in this meeting in this format need to be done by roll call, please.
Just ask Nancy to give a roll.
Nancy, could you call the roll for the approval or disapproval?
Taking a vote for the approval of agenda. Commissioners Beaumont,
Yes.
Fortney,
Yes.
Allen Johnson,
Aye.
Brett Johnson,
Yes.
Lightfoot,
Aye.
Vice Chair Aldridge,
Yes. We have a unanimous approval, so we will move on to item 5, which is business from the floor. This is the time to address the commission with issues that are not on the agenda that are within the commission subject matter jurisdiction. Maximum of 3 minutes per speaker or group. Per code, government code 54954-3. VMC 2.04.130. We have any business from the floor?
Vice Chair Aldridge, I have a couple hands. I will start with the first one on a call ending in 211.
Okay. You can go ahead.
Okay, good. I'm glad you can hear me. Okay, so I actually was going to speak on the Park Parish project. And, my neighborhood received a notice and, we see what the plan changes are. And the reason why we believe that the park is in fact being changed is because in November 2009, there was a Southtown Master Park Plan approved. Every advertisement we saw from the builder, including staff reports as early as August 13th of 2019, it has showed the oval shape of Magnolia Park, the oval shape, it's approximately 12 acres, and it's split by Vanden Road. It has showed that it's all green and has been labeled public park. At no time have I seen anything where the eastern portion of that oval, of that master park plan, that it was had a separate designation of community facilities and that, maybe that land was not owned by the city. I mean, that's not how it was pitched. And you should know that the Southtown Master Park Plan, that was to include community facilities as well as the fire station, playgrounds, tennis courts, volleyball courts, basketball courts, baseball diamond, 2 soccer fields, bathrooms, blah, blah, blah. But that is actually what was approved by council, and that's what our neighborhood wants. I mean, I think, to be blunt, it's outrageous that community facility portion would be carved out of the oval, okay, and replaced with commercial neighborhood zoning, when just on August of 13th of 2019, just a few feet away, there was neighborhood commercial zone lots that was rezoned to medium density. And when Councilman Sullivan called out the developer, this was a bait and switch, the engineer to the developer came to the podium and he said, well, there was a study and commercial is not supported in Southtown. There's no traffic. If there's commercial, it'll be boarded up. It'll be an eyesore, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it went on and on and on. And so we don't want commercial if that's the case. That's what the developer attestation, that's his attestation. He's saying there was a study, doesn't support it. But the bottom line is that is the Magnolia Park Master Plan is the heart and center of Southtown. And that oval shape that is going to be circled by Cogburn Circle is sacred and it should be untouched. And we pay significant taxes, including park assessment fees and including the Melleroos. And we deserve what was approved in November of 2009 by council. And so I look forward to the subsequent hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have another resident via phone ending in 488.
Go ahead, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. I just have a point of order on 8A. When the agenda was, the item was rescinded on the agenda, someone spoke to continue to let everyone know that there was going to be a future meeting, but then continued to speak regarding that item, how it was not going to change and so forth. That last part of that item should probably have not been vocalized. Just a point of order. There just needed to be the point where it said, we will be discussing this in the future. End of sentence. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
I see no other hands.
Thank you. We will then close business from the floor and move on to the consent calendar, the approval of minutes. Does anyone have any comments before we have a motion? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay, we have a roll call.
Courtney, second.
Roll call for consent calendar. Commissioners Bowman,
Yes.
Fortney,
Yes.
Alan Johnson,
Aye.
Brett Johnson,
Yes.
Lightfoot,
Aye.
Vice Chair Aldridge.
Yes. The vote is unanimous. The consent calendar approval of the minutes has been passed, and we will move on to item number 7, proclamation of National Public Works Week. Staff contact is Sean Cunningham.
Tim Burke, our Assistant Public Works Director, will give that presentation.
Thank you, Barton. Good evening, Commissioners. As Barton said, my name is Tim Burke, and I'm the Assistant Director of Public Works. And I'm happy to present to you the National Public Works Week. The theme of this year's National Public Works Week is the rhythm of public works. Every community has a rhythm, a heartbeat, and that reflects its essence and tempo of life. Public Works keeps a community's rhythm moving by providing an orchestra of infrastructure, services in transportation, water, wastewater, and stormwater, public buildings, parks, and right-of-way management. Public Works provides the harmony needed for collaboration with all the stakeholders in capital projects, infrastructure solutions, and quality of life services. Tonight, I'm going to highlight some of the functions and duties of the Public Works Department, and really kind of focus on how Public Works interacts with development. Next slide, please. This is Vacaville's Public Works mission statement: to provide quality and effective services to the public, the development community, and to other city departments in a responsible, efficient, and cost-effective manner. Next slide. Public Works is the second largest department in the city and is organized into 3 divisions. The director, Sean Cunningham, leads the department and manages our admin staff, administrative division. Our maintenance division, which is comprised of about 70% of all of Public Works, is led by our deputy director, Brian McLean. And then finally, I lead the engineering services division. Next slide. Our Public Works administration division monitors and administers the daily activities necessary to maintain an effective, efficient operation. It coordinates with the HR department for hiring. It provides public responses, formal public responses, and it also develops and maintains our $20 million operating budget. Next item. Slide. Our maintenance division is comprised of several sections, and I'm going to go through them pretty fast. Probably not going to do them justice, but I wanted to focus again on the public works interaction with development. First is our fleet and facilities section, which maintains over 500,000 square feet of habitable space. It includes City Hall and 5 fire stations, the Three Oaks Community Facility, the Ulatis Community Center, and other city facilities. Our fleet maintains over 580 vehicles, and it includes purchasing approximately 50 new vehicles a year. It also maintains our central fueling station and our central garage. Next slide. Our street section maintains 310 miles of streets, which includes paving activities for potholes and base failure repairs prior to our annual slurry seal, 700 street lights, 7,000 signs. Our field utility staff maintains our water, sewer, and storm drain system, which includes between 200 and 300 miles of each utility, and the sewer and water services that run to each property. Next slide, please. Shown here, our next section in the maintenance division is the Parks and Creeks crew. They maintain over 586 acres of parkland, 272 acres of setback landscaping, and over almost 1,500 acres of open space and 46 miles of creekways. Next slide. Then our last final sections in our maintenance division include transit, which runs 24 bus fleet through Vacaville, links up with partnering agencies. The general services section, which heads our Americans with Disabilities Act compliance for all our city facilities, and the recycling and waste contract with Recology. And finally, our central stores are located at the courtyard, where you can procure anything from rain gear, shovels, and hand sanitizer, anything you need basically for inside the office or out in the field. Next slide. Next is our engineering services division. Again, this is where I was going to focus a little bit in more detail on what we do and the employees that deal mostly with the community development staff in this commission. The engineering services division is broken into 4 sections: development engineering, traffic operations, design services, and construction services. Next slide. So first is development engineering section. We have 4 employees in this section. They coordinate with private development community to facilitate and approve projects. What does this mean? It means that the community development will bring projects to our development engineering section, and then we'll have early discussions. And what we do is we try and identify roadblocks to the project and what we could do to help. I'll have an example of this after this slide. Development engineering also ensures city standards are maintained and impacts to existing infrastructure is minimized. Again, I'm going to provide a quick example of this situation also. And finally, this section coordinates with encroachment permits, FEMA flood mapping, and final maps, parcel maps, and any citywide easements. Next slide. So this is a quick example I wanted to highlight. As you see here, that this is North Orchard Avenue. The Farmstead development that I believe the Planning Commission approved at least a year ago is off to the right. Early on in the entitlement process, everyone kind of knew that the developer was going to have to construct improvements on North Orchard, and if widened to meet our city standards, all those trees that are shown in the picture would have been removed. So we worked with the developer to ensure that we could fit a travel lane in each direction, but we would eliminate parking on the east side of North Orchard. Put in a sidewalk on the opposite side of the trees, and came up with kind of an agreement on how we can maintain the street and maintain the trees. After an arborist evaluated the trees, they did identify a few of them that needed to be removed, but you still are able to keep several to keep this kind of a nice tree-lined road. Next slide. This next example is kind of how we have to still, adhere to our public works standards, city standards. This is actually from the same project. Once the project plans were under review, our development engineering staff identified how one of the trees that was hoping to remain was in the line of sight for any kind of vehicles exiting Farmstead. This is just a diagram that we typically use, but it is kind of key that that we need to go through these types of reviews to ensure that any kind of hazardous situation that we could deal with up front. And so I think we did that. The tree, although beautiful tree, had to be removed, but it saved us down the line. Next slide. Our traffic section maintains and operates 73 signals throughout the city. They review and approve traffic control plans coming in from contractors when they're doing their work in the street. The traffic section is also heavily involved in our development process, and they review and comment on traffic studies and forecasting of planned improvements and review plans for installation of signage and striping. They also recommend improvements to ensure the safe, efficient movement of pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles citywide. Next slide. Our engineering design section manages our capital improvement program. These are projects that are funded by general fund, Measure M, sewer and water operations, or development impact fees. Annually, this is about $60 million each year. I provided a short list of the types of projects that our design section has put out. Jefferson Parkway Phase 1 that was completed in early 2019. That was a $40 million job that was designed pretty much all in-house by our engineers. The Crocker Waterline project was about approximately $2 million. This was a project that was supposed to be built by the developer of the Interchange Business Park. Seeing as that Interchange Business Park was really not moving forward, our utilities department put up the funding, and we designed this project in-house. We built the project, and then as development rolls in, they will pay us back for that improvement. And that has already started to really kind of kick off a lot of development in that area. Our slurry seal, annual slurry seal projects that is currently out to bid. This year it's going to be about $4 million. And we also have our design staff, hires architects to help with, we're going to be doing a corporation yard admin building that's going to go out to bid this summer. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Finally, our engineering services division includes our construction section staff, which is our inspection staff. Their objective is to provide construction administration for our city capital improvement projects and inspection of all land development work that's within the right-of-way. Next slide. Duties for this section include monitoring and processing labor compliance, construction contract change orders, progress payments, and claims handling. Also, they provide inspections, as I said before, private development, residential, commercial subdivisions, encroachment permits, utility permits. And then also they are looking out to maximize safety and minimize any kind of public impacts. So, next slide. So hopefully I've adequately portrayed the duties and of the dedicated public works employees. Following is a shot of our men and women of public works. Next slide. So thank you, Vacaville residents and the Planning Commission, for your support. I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Tim. That was a great overview. Do you have any questions, planning commissioners?
This is Doug Beaumont. I have a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. That was a great presentation. I just have one little correction. You were talking about the farmstead that the Planning Commission approved. In fact, the Planning Commission voted 7-0 against the farmstead and the City Council approved it. So I just wanted to make that one clarification.
No, thank you. I appreciate the clarification. You're right. I did not get that.
Anyone else on the Planning Commission?
Yeah, we can ask for any public comments, but I don't see any.
Okay, we'll open to the public hearing. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Disposition, it's just a presentation, so we just go on. Thank you again, Tim, for your good work on this. This was very interesting. We will now go on to item 8B, explanation of the upcoming capital improvement program additions, general plan consistency review. And Fred, are you taking care of that?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Chair Aldridge. So this is a brief report, just to lead into an item you'll be seeing in your next month's packet, and just a little background for the Planning Commission on the review, your annual review of the city's new capital improvement program project list for consistency with the general plan. So a nice follow-up to Tim's presentation there on public works projects. So the California Government Code requires that the local agency's capital improvement program projects be in conformance with the general plan. So each fiscal year when the city prepares a budget, and part of that process is for a list of projects to be added to the city's overall capital improvement project list, the Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the City Council on whether the list of new projects is consistent with the general plan. And so this memo is just providing a little background on how that works, where that's cited in the state government code, and is leading up to an action that you'll be asked to take a look at your June meeting. So the Community Development Department anticipates receiving a list of this year's new capital improvement program projects for addition into the budget. And we'll be taking a look at those as soon as we can before your June meeting in order to determine whether they are all consistent with policies and actions and goals in the general plan. That could mean they are one of the facilities that might be shown on a diagram in the general plan. That means, or they could be an action that is identified in a written policy in the general plan. So any of those items, and we'll be detailing that out for you to document that the proposed program is in fact consistent with the general plan. So as I said, we will do a quick analysis on those. Just looking at that, we will usually try to give you an idea of the applicability of the California Environmental Quality Act to those projects as well, determining whether they'll be need to be addressed in larger environmental review documents or whether they're exempt from the Environmental Quality Act. And your action will be to make a recommendation to the City Council. So again, we expect to receive that list very soon from the Public Works Department. We'll be preparing that for your next month's agenda. And this memo was just to provide you with a little bit of background on why you're receiving that and to prepare for that. And that concludes my presentation. No slides with this one, and be happy to answer any questions if you have.
Thank you, Fred. Do we have any commissioner comments? Seeing none, we'll go to a public hearing. Do we have any comments from the public on this item? None? We will close the public hearing, and this is just an information item, so we will go on to item 8C, which is the downtown specific plan, and that's going to be presented to us tonight by Senior Planner Tyra Hayes. Tyra?
Thank you, Chairwoman Aldridge, and good evening, Commissioners. As mentioned, my name is Tyra Hayes, and tonight's item is an informational presentation on the current status of downtown specific plan. A lot has occurred since we last spoke with you back in February of this year. Next slide, please. So this graphic depicts what we have completed, which in this case is our downtown connectivity and streetscape design plan that was approved in February of this year. It also depicts where we currently are, and that is the preparation of evaluation and strategy documents. And lastly, it shows where we're going, and that is to complete the comprehensive downtown specific plan. For anyone who's new to the downtown specific plan process, the reason the downtown connectivity and streetscape design plan was adopted in advance of the overall downtown specific plan is because that document was funded by a Caltrans grant that required that portion of this overall project be completed by the end of February of this year. Next slide, please. So we're really going to be focusing on where we currently are within the downtown specific plan process. So we're going to be revisiting some of the evaluation and strategy documents that we've already completed and discussed with the Planning Commission. And then the majority of the night's really going to be focusing on what we're currently working on to hopefully prime the Planning Commission for receiving those documents within the next month or so. So by way of reminder, the Planning Commission has received and has reviewed the PDA profile, which is the document that documented the existing conditions of downtown as it exists today. You have reviewed the retail strategy that really focused on elements such as what it meant to have active storefronts versus inactive storefronts, and what the benefits would be to include additional active storefronts, and how that would really increase business downtown by increasing pedestrian connectivity. And as we've kind of already touched upon, you have reviewed the downtown connectivity and streetscape design plan. That plan focused on public improvements within the right-of-way as it related to improvements to streets, providing additional bike paths, and increasing pedestrian facilities such as widening sidewalks, making things more interesting, providing landscaping, public art, things of that nature, which would help facilitate more pedestrian activity within the downtown. So every document that we've prepared to date and every document we will continue to prepare throughout this process will build upon each other and or it will complement the previous documents. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned tonight, we're really going to be focusing mainly on the evaluation and strategy documents that are currently underway. And as I previously mentioned, every document here builds upon the previous document and will complement it in some certain way. Rather than looking at these documents as individual chapters that'll be included in a specific plan, they really should be looked at like ingredients. So just like an ingredient, if you mix them together, hopefully they will result in a lovely main dish, which in this case would be the comprehensive downtown specific plan. Next slide, please. So the first document I'd like to discuss with you tonight, and we are currently working on, is the update to the city's existing historic Main Street design requirements. This document, as it currently exists, was created in 1996. And as you can imagine, a lot has changed since then. What we are hoping to do at a minimum with our update is to address some of the ambiguous language within the existing document. We want to make sure that we have enough information to protect the historic integrity of our historic downtown, because that truly is the jewel of downtown itself. We want to ensure that new buildings will complement the existing historic buildings, and we want to improve the graphics. So I'm going to just skip ahead a little bit. I really want to make sure everyone understands everything we're doing is building on another document. So you're going to hear me later on in this presentation. This component, the historic Main Street design requirements, is going to be related to other design-related documents that we are also working on. The next slide, please. So the next strategy we are currently working on is called the Affordable Housing and Anti-Displacement Strategy. This strategy is a requirement of the MTC grant, which is largely funding the downtown specific plan itself. As part of this strategy, we are hoping to find ways to meet the housing needs of all income groups within our community. We're hoping to identify ways to finance and provide incentives for lower income housing. And we want to identify ways to ensure existing lower income households are not displaced by any kind of activities that result from the creation of the downtown specific plan itself. Now, you may recall, or perhaps you don't because it's been a little while, but as part of our PDA profile, again, that was our existing conditions document, we had identified that the household median income for households located within downtown was just over $52,000. It's important to note that because that is $26,000 less than the median income for households citywide. So to phrase that in another way, most people who live downtown make far less money or have a far lesser annual income than the remainder of the city. So that's something that we must take into strong consideration as we move forward with identifying ways to not only revitalize downtown, improve the economic vitality, but to also provide various housing opportunities to all of our citizens. Next slide, please. So the third document we are currently working on is called the Parking Analysis and Policy Strategy. So again, there was a lot of information in that PDA profile, our existing conditions document. And as part of that, we included a parking study that was created in 2019. Now that shouldn't be confused with the parking study that was created previously in 2008. However, the two are related. As part of the strategy we are currently working on, our consultant team is currently comparing the two parking studies to find out whether or not there's certain issues that could be addressed in a way that would not only address existing concerns, but also concerns that may not have been resolved in the past. So we've not yet received this document, but what we are hoping it will include will be the further evaluation and consideration of both parking studies, as I had noted. We will be looking at different alternatives, such as the potential reconfiguration of existing parking lots to provide additional parking spaces, or to provide parking spaces that are specialized in terms of providing additional parking for electric vehicles, or perhaps parking for additional curbside delivery areas. We're also looking at the possibility of providing new parking areas in and around downtown. We are considering the expansion of the existing parking assessment district, which does exist within downtown itself. We're looking at parking management, especially as it relates to parking enforcement. I'm going to come back to that one in just a moment. Following this additional evaluation, it's possible that our consultants may come back with us with possible amendments to our existing parking standards that exist currently in our zoning code. And we're also looking at ways that we can increase or improve our existing parking signage plan to ensure that people understand that we have ample parking downtown, and it's not just limited to the 3 most heavily used parking lots within the center of downtown itself. So on April 23rd, city staff as well as our consultant team held a live webinar online where we met virtually with downtown merchants and property owners. At that time, we had re-reviewed the parking study that we had conducted last year, and we also solicited input in terms of what was foreseen as parking-related issues as perceived by the merchants themselves. And we also asked them for their input on ways that we can possibly help address some of those concerns. That webinar is still available for review on the city's public outreach website, letstalkofvacaville.com. Anyone wishing to review it can go to that website, click on the downtown specific plan picture, and in the upper right-hand side, you will see the parking analysis and policy strategy webinar. Not only can people review that webinar, but they can also provide comments on anything that they review on that site. So as I mentioned earlier, we did hold this webinar, and one of the biggest comments we had received from the downtown merchants and property owners was the issue relating to the lack of parking enforcement. So much to my surprise anyhow, most merchants were in support of parking enforcement. We've heard this not only on the webinar, but in other previous parking-related discussions, that there is a concern that parking is not being managed in terms of we've got people parking in front of certain businesses for the duration of the entire day, therefore blocking those parking spaces, eliminating them from the use of customers and clients of the businesses downtown. So that is something that we are looking into and taking very seriously. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, the next document we are currently working on is what we call our safety strategy. This document will largely be based on the 4 principles of CPTED. CPTED stands for the Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design program. This planning program, for lack of a better word, was created in the 1960s, and it is a design principle that is widely used by police departments and planners to increase the responsible use of properties while decreasing and deterring property crime. Next slide, please. The first strategy of CPTED is the principle of natural surveillance. One way to think of this is the principle of to see and to be seen. So this premise is fairly simple and straightforward. It really focuses on a design that places physical features, activities, and people in such a way that we have maximum visibility throughout the entire community. So if you look at the picture on your screen, you will see that the person standing on the porch not only has ample lighting to be able to see his or her environment, but also we have taken into consideration the height of the landscaping, the tree itself and its lower branches, which aren't obstructing its view, and just providing a wide berth, if you will, for visual observation. In addition to providing additional observation opportunities, it does provide a very pleasing aesthetic for the community. So another way to look at this provides maximum eyes on the street. Next slide, please. Another way to encourage natural surveillance is through what's called activity support. So through activity support, any type of community activity, whether it be a public park, a community square, various activities, we can get people to actively engage in their environment, thus maximizing the appeal and usefulness of the environment, while also providing natural surveillance of the community itself. So this is what really CPTED was created to do. We're trying to provide the most beneficial use of land use while trying to deter criminal activity. Next slide, please. The second principle of CPTED is called access control. And through access control, we try to create an environment that clearly defines both entrances and exits. It minimizes uncontrolled movements in areas that people should not be in, or in areas that people should not be in. Through access control, we can use things such as fencing, gates, landscaping that helps encourage people to stay on identified trails and or sidewalks. It also helps encourage people to use designated pathways. Access control can also go beyond just using natural features, and it can include things such as additional signage and surveillance systems. Next slide, please. The third principle of CPTED includes what's called territorial reinforcement. Through territorial reinforcement, the environment is designed in such a way that it creates a clear delineation of space that separates public, semi-public, semi-private, and private spaces. The purpose of this is to make it very obvious if someone's in an area that maybe they shouldn't be in. And it also encourages people to stay within the areas they should be in. So we don't necessarily want people wandering off public pathways into private areas, maybe in areas they really shouldn't be in. Next slide, please. The final and fourth principle of CPTED is called maintenance. And with maintenance, this is really based on a well-known theory that was created in the early 80s known as the broken window theory. To simply summarize this theory, there is a public perception that when we as humans see a broken or dilapidated area, that area is perceived as though no one cares for it, there's a lack of ownership, and that it's okay to further vandalize that area with little or no repercussions. So this theory has been tested numerous times, and there's a lot of evidence to support that this is a very valid theory. So based on that, it is highly recommended that we be very vigilant with maintaining not only the appearance, but also the functionality of development within our downtown as well as citywide. So that kind of goes over the four principles of CPTED, but I also want to let the Planning Commission know that we are currently working very closely with both our police department as well as our code enforcement department to address other known and possible safety concerns in the future. Next slide, please. Okay, switching gears to the next document. This document has been completed, but we've not yet implemented it anywhere. So that's why we're talking about it tonight. So a few years ago, a few of you may recall that the city had worked with a bunch of students from UC Davis, and they had identified ways to improve the city of Vacaville. One specific student decided to focus on the possibility of providing a permanent farmers market structure within our downtown. This idea was well received, and based on that, we were directed to include an analysis that would look at the financial feasibility of providing such a structure in the future within our downtown. So this document was created by our economic subconsultant, BAE, and This document, which is now currently available for anyone to review and to comment on, is located again on our city-wide public outreach site, and that's letstalkvacaville.com. Again, just click on the downtown specific plan picture. All the documents we've completed to date are available online. Within that document, there is a discussion about the potential cost to construct such a facility. There is an analysis on what the city can expect in terms of a return on its investment. There are potential funding sources identified. And then, in addition to that, we've also identified other potential benefits to downtown, which includes, but is not limited to, it would provide a very prominent focal point for downtown. It would do this by creating a sense of space. By doing that, it does help draw not only customers downtown, but it also draws additional vendors to participate within our farmers market. It does that by making, it makes it a little easier for vendors to operate with underneath the actual facility itself. It also extends the season in which the farmers market can operate. Currently, the farmers market only operates in the summer months. With a permanent farmers market structure, that could be extended potentially year-round. And when not used by the farmers market, it could potentially be used by other activities and festivals. Next slide, please. Okay, and lastly, we are currently working on our design guidelines document. So this document will be a complementary document to future zoning and development requirements that will be developed as part of the overall downtown specific plan. The idea behind this is we want to be able to provide developers and property owners an idea of how they can best help the city and the community reach the vision that we are envisioning for downtown itself. We're doing this by providing information that relates to everything from site design, building design, to lighting, signage, and public art. So this is a bit of a hefty document. It's currently in review and being worked on. We do anticipate this will be one of the heftier documents that the Planning Commission will be reviewing within the next few months. So please be ready for that, and we look forward to sharing that with you. Next slide, please. So just so everyone is clear, all the documents that we've discussed tonight, with the exception of the completed documents, will be made available probably as early as next month, maybe at the very latest August. So you can definitely expect to see these documents, whether it be a few at a time or together, probably at the next 2 or 3 Planning Commission meetings. So really the whole purpose of tonight's discussion was just to help prime the Planning Commission and the public to let them know what they can expect and how they can help participate in the process. All these documents will also be made available online. People can review them at their leisure, and they can provide comments to staff as well as the consultant team through the Let's Talk Vacaville website. So with that, as though that was not enough, we still have the final steps that we have to conduct in order to complete the specific plan. Those final steps include another series of documents, the ingredients, if you remember, for the downtown specific plan. Those documents and tasks include identifying and analyzing shovel-ready sites. Shovel-ready sites is a term that we typically use when we're referring to a pre-approved development entitlement on a property for a certain type of use. It's more of a pre-approval of a prototype. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to evaluate a potential development on a site and provide its environmental clearance. And by doing that, we're hoping to remove any uncertainty a developer may have about developing that site. Uncertainty is the biggest risk that developers face when deciding to develop a site. So if we can help reduce that uncertainty or even remove it, we can then hopefully use that as a marketing tool, which will hopefully get people excited about developing within our downtown. So that will be probably the cornerstone of the specific plan, and I do anticipate having a pretty hefty meeting with the Planning Commission on that specific topic, probably later this fall. Other tasks and documents include a pedestrian-friendly design / placemaking strategy. That's probably going to be a lighter document, probably going to be a lot of fun, similar to some of the documents you've heard about tonight. We're going to be doing things in terms of identifying amenities in downtown and evaluating them to see whether or not they will be sufficient to meet the future needs of a redeveloped downtown if we were to increase the number of residential units as well as increasing the amount of square footage of commercial uses. Probably most importantly, we are going to be doing a financing strategy. Everything we would love to do downtown comes with a price tag, and it's not likely that the city's going to be able to bear the burden of that cost solely by ourselves. So we're looking into other financing opportunities such as grant funding, private public partnerships. We're also looking into ways that we can potentially help our merchants and property owners also seek various grants and other funding opportunities to improve their own private properties. So as I mentioned, we're working on providing environmental clearance for the entire downtown. And we will also come back to you with a comprehensive zoning and development requirements. Next slide, please. So before asking the Planning Commission whether or not they have any questions or comments, I did receive one question earlier today that I would like to address. I did receive a question in terms of what's currently happening in downtown in relation to some of our projects that are currently under construction. So I would like to inform the Planning Commission that we have a few things moving forward and quite exciting, and all these uses I'm about to go over support the vision for downtown. The first project is called Beer 40. It's a temporary beer garden being proposed on the corner of East Monte Vista and Dobbin. That project is currently moving forward with the hope of opening in July. It is a temporary use that is anticipated to operate from July through the end of the year. And there is a possibility that they may be looking into purchasing that site from the city to create a permanent beer garden. The next project currently under construction is the Sonoma Springs Brewery, located in the old Carnegie Library, located on Main Street. As you may recall or have seen, they did complete the improvements of the outdoor patio, but given our current economic climate and what we're dealing with, they haven't been able to open their restaurant. So they are looking into other ways that they could potentially do a soft opening, for lack of a better term. And one such approach includes a proposal to use food trucks to supplement the beer distribution on the site. That is something that they are currently working on with the planning department. So please stay tuned on that. And if I understood everything correctly, I believe that Backdoor Bistro is currently open for business, but they're only open for carry-out business. So while we are amidst planning a huge future for our downtown, I do want to stress that there are a lot of things currently happening downtown, and we do believe that these are very valuable activities that's going to help us meet our overall vision for downtown itself. I have talked quite enough tonight, so if the Planning Commission has any questions or comments, please ask those now.
Thank you, Tyra, for that great presentation. Very, very informative. Do we have any commissioner comments?
Vice Chair Aldrich, this is Alan Johnson. I raised my hand. I don't know if you can see it from your point of view.
No, I cannot, but thank you for raising your hand. Please comment.
Okay, hi Tyra, Alan Johnson. Very informative as always. I have two things surrounding finance. as you mentioned, we have a potential financial issue with the virus and all the economic outcome that's going to come from that. You mentioned that this project is primarily funded by 2 grants. Also, with regard to the farmers market, you said you've identified some funding strategies, and a big component of the entire project is your financial strategy. My question with regard to that is, are any of these funding sources in jeopardy because of these issues that we're facing? And number 2, I'll just go ahead and ask the second one. With regard to the shovel-ready sites, are any economic incentives component of those projects? Those are my 2 questions.
Okay. I'm just writing those down so I make sure I address them. So this is where it gets even more complicated. Originally, our downtown specific plan was being funded by 2 grants, but we have a 3rd one coming online. We have completed and completely used up our first grant, which is the Caltrans grant. That grant primarily funded our downtown streetscape connectivity and streetscape design plan. So that was in the amount of, I think, $205,000. So that one's already done. We've received payment. It's in the book. The second main grant is from MTC. As far as I know, that is not in jeopardy. We are currently drawing from that grant. We're due to receive a large check in the very near future. That grant is based on deliverables. So I think we're okay there. We are waiting to we're waiting to receive the financial agreement from the 3rd grant. The 3rd grant is coming from the California Department of Housing and Community Development. And that grant is meant to help fund housing-related construction and planning efforts. So that's one of the grants that we're using to help fund some of the activity related to identifying and evaluating the shovel-ready sites. So we do anticipate 1, maybe 2 of those shovel-ready sites focusing on housing, because it was identified within our retail strategy, one of our completed documents, that it is imperative to the economic health of downtown to have more residents downtown. So while I can't emphatically say there's no risk to our grant funding, I believe there is.
Okay, excellent.
To answer your second question, the shovel-ready site task is in and of itself an incentive program. To explain it simply, you can look at it as though the city is doing all it can in terms of the upfront work to entice developers to invest in downtown. So we're doing a lot of the work that they would typically have to do through the entitlement process. We are identifying certain uses that could fit on certain lots within the downtown area. We will then look at, the massing of the structure. We're going to be doing a pro forma for these potential uses to see whether or not they'd be economically feasible. We're going to be doing the environmental clearance. We're going to do all of that. And then hopefully we'll be able to package it up in such a way that we can use it as a marketing tool. So again, by its very nature, doing the shovel-ready site work up front is an incentive. Hopefully, if we do this correctly, a developer will be able to come in and almost be able to go directly to the building counter and request a building permit should their proposed development be consistent with what we had evaluated.
Okay, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing more in the future.
Great.
Any other commissioners? Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Anybody else?
Vice Chair Aldridge, we have a caller ending in 075.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Hi, great presentation, especially on CPTED. I had a quick question, actually a 2-part question. As far as the downtown viability, is there any economic incentives to the previous, homeowners, as far as like Merchant and Main, for example, of getting online or on board with the city plan of revitalization, with far as maybe lighting, going back to your CPTED, any kind of, I guess, any way to bring them into the fold to spend money pretty much for your plan. And then the second question was for the commissioner, as far as the point of order that she made, that the park and parish would be rescheduled indefinitely as far as rezoning of the park. And my apologies for the second question, but I was unable to figure out the phone until I was able to figure out how to get on this Zoom meeting. But thank you.
So to answer your first question, the one related to the economic or potential economic incentives for existing business owners, unfortunately, I don't have a direct answer for you. Just recently, we, like many people, have realized that we need to take another look at what we've done to date as it relates to the downtown specific plan, and also as it relates to our future work. We realize that we do need to focus on how we can best help existing businesses as it relates to things such as maybe providing additional curbside delivery areas, providing additional outside retail areas, things of that nature. So we are currently in the process of identifying ways that we can help existing businesses, not only now, but also in the future, heaven forbid, if this were to happen again. So we are very cognizant of providing incentives. As of right now, we don't have them, but as you may have seen through the presentation, we do have several steps that we still need to complete. So I can assure you we are looking into that, and I can say with very high certainty there will be something in there that will address ways that we can help existing businesses, especially as it relates to helping them find grant funding.
Thank you.
The other question, I'm sorry, I can't answer that.
Thank you for the first question, though.
We have another guest on the line. Yes. Oh, go ahead, Nancy.
We do. We have a caller ending in 488.
Good evening again, commissioners. I'm Teresa Stout. I just have for the person who just gave the presentation. Thank you. Very, very informative. Much appreciated. I just have a question regarding the permanent farmers market structure. When I looked at it online, what I couldn't tell is if there were going to be enough room behind those structures so that the folks, the vendors, can park their vans right behind where it is that they would be working, because they talk about it. I've heard them talk about it now, that did you get the good side? And the good side is where they're able to park their vehicles right there instead of having to hand truck all their items in. And so then that way they can unload the product as it's needed. So is that space going to be there for them? And then the second part of that is, how will that permanent structure affect the music venues during the summer? Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for your question. That was a fabulous question. And it was actually a topic that was brought up by the Pacific Coast Farmers Market manager, who we've been working with very closely as part of that task. In fact, you may recall, we had a couple of people we interviewed, and he was one of those people. He did note the importance of providing areas for the vendors to load and offload their goods. And the optimum way to do that would to be able to provide enough space behind their tent to park their vehicle. So we are moving forward with that in mind. The analysis that we provided wasn't as detailed as necessary in order to construct this facility, but it does identify, should we find the funding necessary to build it, one of the first things that we'd have to ensure with the final site selection would be exactly what you mentioned, and that would be to provide adequate space for the vendors' vehicles. So I want to make sure everyone understands, with the farmers market evaluation, we weren't really focusing so much on its location as we were its economic feasibility and its benefit to downtown. It is one of the many documents that we've discussed tonight. That's just one of the ingredients that will be used and incorporated into the specific plan. I don't know what that's going to look like when we get to the final specific plan itself. That will be subject to additional public input as well as input from our planning commissioners and our city council. If you do have any additional comments on where you think it should be or not be, by all means, I would love to hear that. Again, I greatly appreciate what you brought up. I fully agree with you. I personally did not think about any potential impacts that a permanent farmers market structure would have on the music venues. I can tell you that the other main person that we did interview as part of this evaluation was the president of our downtown Vacaville Business Improvement District. And she is the person in charge of the Creek Walk concert series. To my knowledge, she didn't identify any conflicts, but that is definitely something I can follow up with her on to ensure that we don't jeopardize that. We do realize the great importance of the Creek Walk series as well as all the other festivities that do occur within Andrews Park. So I'm sorry I don't have a more direct answer for you, but I greatly appreciate the comment, and I can assure you that this will be taken into further consideration as we move through the process.
Thank you. Does that answer your questions? Okay, seeing no more of the public or the public hearing that wish to speak, are there any other commissioner comments on this item? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 9. And again, Tyra, thank you so very much. Item
thank you.
9A, current planning. Who's going to be doing that?
Chair Aldridge, this is Albert Enold. I'll be performing the current planning report update.
Thank you.
So during the month of April, we received quite a bit of projects, most notably the Alamo Creek subdivision, which is a tentative subdivision map, and plan development request to subdivide a vacant 9.9 acre parcel over off of Leisuretowne and Redstone into 144 lots for single family residential development. So that's currently being reviewed by our department. The proposal, and it does include 0 lot lines with 1,800 square foot lots. Another project that we received is for the Midway Commerce Center. It's a design review application that we're looking at. It's to construct 5 single-story warehouses for distribution and warehousing on vacant land over off of Midway and Eubanks. And the total floor area for all these buildings would be 1.6 million square feet. I also have a tentative subdivision map request to abandon Chancellor Court and revise some boundaries out there. We did receive a couple of applications, planned developments for hotels, one Hampton Inn and Suites over at 1000 Mason Street. It's a proposal to construct a 5-story 109-room hotel, 2 large meeting rooms and a swimming pool. The other hotel that's being proposed is where the existing Best Western Hotel is at 1420 East Monte Vista. They're looking at demolishing that building, and they would like to build a new Best Western Hotel that would consist of 4 stories and 94 rooms. We also received a plan development request for Sparrow Grove house plans. This is the first house plan proposal within the Roberts Ranch subdivision. It would be in Village C. It consists of 74 lots, and the applicant, Richmond American Homes, they're looking at constructing 4 new house plans in there that would consist of 3 single-story plans and 1 2-story plan that would range from 2,500 square feet to 3,200 square feet. And then just honorable mention about how we're still receiving those administrative clearance applications. We received one during April. It's just for people to reduce setbacks. This particular one to reduce a required front yard setback to build a new home. Development applications that were approved include Papen Commercial Center. The Planning Commission reviewed that one last month, voted 7-0 to reaffirm the farm at Alamo Creek EIR and approve that conditional use permit and determination of public convenience and necessity. Also last month, the Farmstead House plans were approved by the Director of Community Development. That consists, again, the Farmstead development. It consists of 130 lots. That was previously approved, the tentative map and the zoning for that area. And this proposal by Taylor Morrison was to construct the houses within that area. And their houses consisted of 5 two-story models, ranging in floor area from 1,700 square feet to 2,200 square feet. Their architectural designs that were proposed with their plans include ranch, Italian, and cottage-themed designs. We were also still busy with home-based businesses. We received 17 applications and approved 23. We had some building permit applications that we reviewed also. There were 28 during April, which included plan check for LDK warehouse project off of Midway. They're looking at doing grading and underground. Also, the Harbison Senior Apartments, they're looking at moving forward with their project too. And then just a reflection of some house plans still moving forward and the Montera development over in Benton Estates D, and then also the Parkside, the Silverito plot plans. We're seeing still houses that are being built. And during April, received and helped customers with 88 develop-related inquiries. So that's it for current planning. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Albert. You were busy. Do we have any commissioner comments?
No.
No? We will then move on to item 9B, advanced planning, and who will be taking care of that?
Fred Buderi.
Fred.
Thank you very much. Again, Fred Buderi with Advanced Planning. So the report for the last month, you did hear a report on one of our most time-consuming efforts, and that is the downtown specific plan. So a lot of activity going on there. We're also working on the Green Tree project. So the last month has been a lot of work working on environmental mitigation standards that will be applied to the project for endangered species, and also preparing a preliminary review for an apartment project that would be submitted as part of that future specific plan project. We are also reviewing and getting ourselves up to speed on the latest version of the Habitat Conservation Plan, the Solano County Habitat Conservation Plan. This will be a species protection program that will apply to all development and should provide a better process for projects to meet their obligations for species protection. We're also working with other staff and consultants on new traffic impact analysis standards. This is called the Vehicle Miles Traveled Standard, a new requirement in state environmental planning law that will go into effect this summer. And it's developing new standards for evaluating the impacts of a project by looking at its increase in the resulting increase in the number of vehicle miles residents or employees may need to travel to get to or from that project, and the resulting changes in greenhouse gas emissions and air quality. So a different type of standard than what cities in California have been used to for decades, which is judging the impact based on how it impacts the convenience of driving quickly through areas, and instead looks at the air quality, greenhouse gas emission, and the need to drive further to obtain services or get to work. We're doing some work on the city's permit tracking system and integration with the geographic information system to enable especially the inspectors to plan their routing easily and create records for inspections more readily. We're working on some new report software for graphics to try and upgrade the status of the graphics we provide to you and the public in our reports. And we are currently working on finalizing the Roberts Ranch Development Agreement time extension, which you reviewed in a previous month and has been reviewed for its first reading at the City Council. Nearly done. We'll go to Council next week on that, hoping to finalize that. And continuing to work on the code update project. So we haven't been in front of the Planning Commission for a while now on the latest code update chapters, but we do believe in June we will have that next one ready for you. And that is on the administration and procedures section. So all the processes for reviewing and approving projects, all those administrative procedures. And our goal there is to make the code more user-friendly, easier to use, simpler for those people seeking to understand the code and use it for their projects. It's been, this particular chapter, been quite complicated and has had a lot of review back and forth with the consultant team. So we've been taking a little bit longer time on that one. And in addition to all of that, we are still working on a few subdivision plan checks for the subdivision improvements. That includes some work in the Roberts Ranch project for the phase that Albert mentioned he has received the house plans for, some work in the Vanden Meadows area. And then we're looking at now the final landscape plans for the Farmstead subdivision improvements. So their trails, their park landscaping, and their work in that street frontage area where we had to work with the arborists to find ways to modify the street construction standards so the large existing trees in that area are protected as construction takes place. And that concludes my review.
Thank you, Fred. Do we have any commissioner comments?
This is Commissioner Beaumont. Fred, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Fred, on the Green Tree development, I'm just wondering if you could comment, does the proposed development use Yellowstone as an in and out thoroughfare into the new development?
The draft plans, and they are still in draft form, but they do show a connection of Yellowstone into the project development area on the north side of Sequoia Street. So there is a connection shown there on the concept plans being developed by the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Any other commissioner comments?
Commissioner Alan Johnson, I might have one thing to add.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Fred, you brought it up, or Doug brought it up regarding Green Tree. I just want to ask, is the continued dialogue with the residents out there in Green Tree still happening as it's been reported before?
Yes, it is. We have regular meetings scheduled with the group. We did postpone our last scheduled meeting, was just a couple of weeks ago, and just given the current meeting environment and kind of a slower period where we're still working with consultants to gather the next set of information that we want to pass along to the neighborhood, we did postpone one meeting. So, but we do have those on a scheduled on a regular basis, and we do hold those meetings as needed.
Thank you, Fred.
Any other commissioners? Seeing none, we do have a guest, 075. You may go ahead.
Just quick question for the presenter. As far as the wildlife impact, is there any significant wildlife that we are concerned about in Vacaville that we would need an impact study for? If you can provide further information on that, be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. Certainly. There are several species, either endangered or special, what would be called special status species, covered by mostly state law, but also federal law, that are present in the city of Vacaville and its surrounding planning area. Some of the most common ones, raptors like a Swainson's hawk, which is a state protected species. It's the impact that development in Vacaville has on that species is to its foraging habitat because they forage on agricultural fields or grasslands. And so there's also another bird species, the burrowing owl. Those are present sometimes even in urbanized areas. They live in the ground, of course, in burrows. And again, one of the greatest impacts to them is loss of nesting habitat through construction activity and loss of their foraging habitat, which is also grassland areas. There are other species as well in some of the creekways and wetlands. There are species present that the city or construction projects need to incorporate protective measures to avoid species during construction and follow best practices to minimize any disturbance to either nesting or have habitat sites for those species. So that's just a brief wrap up, but there are quite a few. If you review online the Solano County Habitat Conservation Plan, there is a very comprehensive discussion about all of the species present in the greater county area. Not all of them are present in Vacaville, but it provides an extremely good resource for understanding the presence of protected species throughout the area. I hope that helps with some information.
Thank you. We have another guest online on phone, guest 719.
Hi, I'm Wendy Brecken, and I just had a couple questions about the advanced or current planning for projects for single-family dwellings. One question is, what do you do to ensure that there's adequate schools for the children that are going to live in those homes? It used to be that the city had a school relations committee, and that the planning of development, the city would work hand in hand with the school. And so that was one question. And another question I had was, how do you ensure that parks are planned and built as planned? Because there seems to be, we're not meeting our standards for parks as stated in our parks assessment.
Okay, I can try and answer both of those. So in the planning for large-scale development projects, we do consult with the affected school district. In Vacaville, the two main districts, of course, the Travis Unified and the Vacaville Unified. There is a small part of the city that is within the Dixon Unified School District as well. So when we go through a large-scale land planning activity, we do consult with those districts to identify the potential student enrollment that would result from development, and then they provide information on the ability of their existing facilities to either accommodate those students or the need for sites to be reserved within development areas. And with regard to the actual construction of schools, that is really handled by the districts themselves through their own process for obtaining funds from the state. Development in all cities pays a school impact fee, but that is typically not enough to actually fully construct schools, and the state provides those districts with the funding to do full school construction. So there are sites reserved throughout the city that have not yet been developed for schools, but are planned for them. And that's the process we use for school planning. With regard to parks, it's very similar. The city's general plan sets out general locations for planned parks and new parks. It also establishes a desired service ratio in terms of numbers of park acres in the city per 1,000 residents. And the city's goal in adopting the general plan is to provide park areas that will eventually reach that service standard of number of park acres per 1,000 residents. And so in a project like the one we talked about earlier, the Green Tree project, a very large scale residential project, which is changing the general plan. They will be looking at providing park acreage in the planned neighborhood with the intent of meeting or exceeding the city's standard for park acreage to try and get the community closer to that desired park acreage per 1,000 residents. And then the same process goes on throughout the city. For infill projects, the project we talked about a little earlier this evening with Public Works Office Director, the Farmstead project was an infill project. Its property actually did include a portion of a desired park site. And so the development of new homes on that infill property in North Vacaville will also include a small park that will be constructed by the developer in that area. And so let's see, hopefully that answers your question or at least provides you with some information on that.
Thank you. Is that it?
That's all.
We have more folks waiting online. Are there any more commissioner comments before we move on?
Oh, yes. Yes, 075.
Okay, yes, 075. Go ahead, please.
Oh, sorry. To piggyback off the previous caller's question, as far as schools and parks, as far as the Southtown development that was land given to the Travis School District, has there been any progress on schools as far as that, or is that relegated to Travis School District to make?
There is a site within or just directly adjacent to the Southtown development area. It fronts on Opal Drive and also Nut Tree Road. And that, I believe the site has actually been purchased a number of years ago by the Travis School District. And I believe it is sized for both a middle and elementary school, although I would have to check with the district to really confirm that. So again, that process, when the city was looking at annexing that part of South Vacaville into the city and doing the large-scale land planning, we consulted with the district. They began their own investigation of potential sites that would suit the school needs eventually. And I believe they have actually acquired that property. As far as timing for construction of a school, that would be an activity that the district themselves would be responsible for and in charge of.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. No more? Any commissioner comments before we move on? No, seeing none, we will move on to item number 10, the director's report. Item letter A, discussion of ex parte contact.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair Aldrich and commissioners. So we wanted to talk just a little bit about ex parte communications and just what that is. And, I know at meetings we asked the commission if you had any ex parte communications and don't always understand what that is or what the importance of doing that is or how to do it. So I thought we'd take just a minute and explain that and why it's important. So I asked our Assistant City Attorney, Andrea Borba, to give a little presentation on that. So she's on the line and I'd like to turn the time over to her.
Good evening, Vice Chair Aldridge and Commissioners. Like Barton said, we're just going to do a few-minute primer for all of you on ex parte communications and how they impact our public hearings. Can we advance the slide? Thank you. So the reason that the administrative record and or any public hearing record is important for the city is that when the city is confronted with appeals related to projects or items that have been approved by the commission, that hearing becomes a very important part of the public record. The actions that the commission takes on matters that implicate constitutionally protected property and liberty interests are required to go through hearing requirements for the purpose of affording those people whose interests are impacted due process. So the quality of our record becomes an very important piece of evidence for the city when we face legal challenges to projects that have been approved or disapproved. So the record from the public hearing should include everything that each commissioner relied upon in making the decision on whatever item is before you. Can you advance the slide, please? Albert, okay, thank you. So in understanding what the public record is and what types of materials the city would produce in any litigation where our decisions are challenged, our record, for the most part, for the items that you hear would include the staff work that was done in the agenda, all the reports and attachments to the agenda, any communications that are received by the commission, written communications, or correspondence received by the department provided to the commission. And the last part is the part that I think is of concern as we're just discussing ex parte communications, is the information that you receive from other communications that you may have with an applicant, a developer, an engineer that's working with the applicant, a member of city staff that provides you information that wasn't otherwise provided in the staff reports or attachments, or a member of the community that has provided you with information that isn't included in the staff reports or attachments. So the best way and the best practice, can we move to the next slide, please? The best practice for us to create the best record during the commission meetings is to, during the item, when it's on that actual item and commissioner comments are being made, it's important to disclose if you've had ex parte communications so that they become part of the public hearing, and we've allowed the due process requirement, which means that the members of the public or the applicant or any party that has a vested interest in the item has an opportunity to know what the commissioners have considered and relied upon in making their decision so that they can comment on those things, rebut information, provide additional information that they might feel is relevant based on what you've disclosed related to an ex parte communication. So the best practice is for there to be a disclosure that the communication occurred, which party you spoke with, the information that you were provided, if it's different than the information that was already included in the agenda package, and whether or not that information impacted your decision. Now, if you had a meeting with someone and discussed something and you weren't provided any new information and you weren't given anything that you relied upon in making your decision, then it's in your discretion as to whether or not you want to make that part of the public record. But any information that you've taken and are using in making considerations and they've impacted your decision, the best practice is to state what information you've received and from whom you've received it on the public record during the public hearing. So it's kind of simple, and it's just a way for us to create the best possible record and ensure that we are meeting the due process requirements of parties that have an interest in the decision. So I am available to answer any questions. That's a very brief explanation, but hopefully it gives some guidance as to best practices.
Thank you very much. Do we have any commissioner questions on this item? Seeing none, we have guest 075. Go ahead.
Hi, legal counsel. Can you provide a quick recap on why this information is being presented? Because it's a way of the two-part question. Why is this information being presented? And then also, was there a predicate for why this is being presented for future meetings? I'm just having a hard time understanding why the commissioners would need to understand if they've had outside meetings with contacts that they need to disclose that. I would think that'd be kind of common. End of question.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can address that.
Okay, please.
Chair Aldridge. All of our planning commissioners are lay planning commissioners. They do a fabulous job and they are important conduits for our community, but it takes constant training and information sharing with the commission. So we have made it a practice to do frequent training with our planning commissioners. We offer sort of an annual training with the other commissioners in the county, and we often have short times that we just give a little bit of information. Just like any job, a planning commissioner, it's important that they know their duties and how to conduct them. We have new planning commissioners now, and so it's something that we do on a continual basis. I know that in the recent past, people have been asked, well, have you had meetings with the applicants? And the commissioners have said, yes, I've had a meeting with the applicant, which is perfectly fine. But we wanted to say that just that should be followed up with, and I didn't receive any information that's not already in the record, just so that we have a good process. So again, it's simply to train our planning commissioners because it's a tough job and we appreciate them, and it's an opportunity for them to learn.
Thank you, Burton. Did that answer your question? Yeah. Are there any other questions?
Vice Chair Aldridge, this is Brett Johnson. Just to piggyback what Director Brierly added, the question asker, if we could also have everybody state their name, because the majority of people have not during this meeting, and it's hard to keep track of who's who. He had mentioned that the majority of the planning commissioners should be familiar with this process. We are familiar with this, so part of this explanation, I would imagine, would be to also educate the greater public as to the process and protocol for maintaining transparency with the Planning Commission. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
My computer died, so Nancy, if you have anybody.
We have public ending in 075 again.
Okay.
Thank you very much for unmuting me. Hey, so I understand that you have to maintain routine training requirements for.
Can you please state your name?
My name is Adam Carney. I'm a resident of 7066 Westminster.
Thank you.
So I'm a Vacaville resident. Yeah, no. So I understand that you have to maintain routine training, especially when you have people that are elected positions that is not their main job. So I premised that question, but my first question was to legal counsel because she's providing that. To be honest with you, it appears you're trying to be transparent, which I greatly appreciate. But usually during a public forum, you would not come out and make a public display of that. You need to articulate if you've had any meetings with developers. So my question, then again, that wasn't asked, was the sole purpose of that question explanation by legal counsel, which is hired on to protect the city for purposes of training, or was there another reason why that was said on this call?
Legal counsel is continuously trying to provide commissioners with training and information related to best practices and performance of their duties as public servants. And so that's the basis for this update. is just to continue sharing information to ensure that the city is following best practices. So that's the reason.
Okay, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? Nancy?
No, not this time.
Okay, we will then move on to item 10B, City Council actions pertaining to Planning Commission items.
Okay, thank you, Chair Aldridge. This is Barton Brierly, Community Development Director. So the last City Council meeting, the City Council heard the extension of the Roberts Ranch Development Agreement that the Commission had heard, and they introduced that ordinance and are going to have a second reading at their May 26th meeting. So that's the only City Council item. As far as upcoming Planning Commission items, at the next meeting will be the June 16th meeting. We will have a very important item that is election of officers. So consider who you want to elect as your chair and vice chair for the next year. We also reviewed the capital improvement program as Fred had presented. And we will have the code update on the administrative procedures as Fred had discussed. And may have one or two other items. So, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any, item 11, do we have any commissioner comments?
Vice Chair Aldrich, I do.
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank the Vice Chair for running the meeting this evening on her birthday and wish her a happy birthday.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that.
What better birthday present?
Especially since I was supposed to be on a cruise in the Caribbean tonight, which obviously didn't happen. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Seeing or hearing no one, we'll do item 12, adjournment, and we will adjourn to the next regular meeting of the Planning Commission on Tuesday, June 2020. Good night, Vacaville.